Hello everyone. I'm continuing to look at games from the 1e45 repertoire and more specifically in the Polerio defense. So Polerio defense happens within the two knights defense, knight g5, d5, ed and knight a5. So white went bishop b5, c6, takes, bishop d3. As I said last time, this is kind of the main line nowadays, and black plays knight to d5. And I briefly mentioned in a previous video that why knight f3 is the main line, but then I checked on leeches and knight e4 is almost equally popular, so I decided that it makes sense to also see maybe a game or two about this continuation. So what's the main problem about this knight e4 is that it simply allows this f pawn to march forward with the tempo, and then probably also e4 can be played with the tempo. So this is in short the main problem, and also now the bishop on d3 looks a little bit silly, since white would like to develop with d3. So here knight f4 is the move. So first we are attacking the bishop. Immediate f5 is also possible, and it was also played by a couple of strong players, but yeah, I don't know, maybe this move order with knight f4 is a little bit more unpleasant, I would say, but yeah, this f5 is also certainly playable. So knight f4, now white has problems on g2 and d3, so they play bishop f1. Now black goes f5. So white has two options in this position. Knight can go back to g3 or to c3. And one is clearly better than the other. So if the knight goes to g3, there is not a whole lot to know with the black pieces, because there is a strong knight on f4, which not only attacks on g2, but thanks to this unfortunate knight on g3, it cannot really be harassed by g3. So maybe there is one important kind of important move, is like just to play bishop d6. So if you would go to bishop c5, which looks more aggressive, then white can play c3, and sometimes this d4 move can come with the tempo. But this is good for black, but even better to go to d6, then let's say d3, castle, knight c3, and very easy moves like you play c5, you open the long diagonal, you prepare the way back for the knight, then you will put the queen somewhere, then bring the rook, and huge pressure on white's position. You can see on the evaluation bar that it's already very problematic position for white. It's very difficult to make moves simply. So yeah, knight g3 is not good. Knight c3 is what is mainly played. But now there is no reason against bishop c5, because what I showed you, this c3 d4 is simply not working because the knight is in front of the c pawn. So now bishop c5 is good, and I mean obviously ideas like queen d4 are in the air. So g3 was played in this game. I mean, very logical. White is wanting to get rid of this knight, probably then play bishop g2 and castle short. So if white can do those things, I mean, then the position is just complicated. One other alternative I would like to show you, which sometimes happens, is knight to a4. So white's idea is to kick this bishop away from this very nice diagonal, but tactically it's not quite working, because black has takes on f2, king f2, and then queen d4, giving the check and attacking the knight. White has to go back, queen a4. And here actually there is some very beautiful line. If white plays well, but okay, it's in the course. I'm not going to show it now. It's rather theoretical, so no games here. But yeah, I mean, in any case, black is doing fine. So, but there are some really nice continuations here, and okay, it shouldn't be that surprising, right? Because the king cannot move. I mean, cannot castle rather. So bishop c5, g3 is the most expected move, and one important thing in this Polerio defense is that okay, we sacrifice a pawn, and especially if our opponent is not playing in the most critical, or main lines, then it's not at all obvious that we have to make retreating moves so often. It's very, very common that we can keep pieces on pre. Here we kind of do that, but also not really at the same time because we play queen d4, and I mean it's not like that's an option for white to take on f4, since that would be mate in one on f2. So white has to play queen f3. That's the only way to cover the f2 square, and now knight to e6. So now obviously the knight was already hanging, but one very important thing was achieved. Instead of actually it was the bishop on d3, which was facing this e4 tempo. Now the queen is facing this e4 tempo, which is very, very uh, unpleasant. So the queen is clearly misplaced there, and also sometimes knight g5 can be played. If the queen retreats, then knight d4 can be played. So yeah, a lot of threats already for black. And in this game, d3 was played, which is very logical, stopping e4. I mean, at least trying. I looked at two other normal moves which can easily happen. So, for example, knight e2, with the idea of kicking back the queen first. Queen can go to a lot of squares. According to the computer, it's all the same. I mean, for me, queen d6 looks like normal square. Why would we go back to d8? Queen d7 arguably is also interesting. So, but let's just go to d6. In general, that's always available. And then white goes bishop to g2. And it looks like the next move is castles or d3, and white's position is not so bad. But in fact, they are just not quite in time. So there is this nice move, bishop to a6. Bishops are just super strong in these diagonals, and again, white has very serious problems of finishing the development. So, for example, immediate short castle is just losing the game to e4. Queen has to guard knight. Only can do it from here, but after g6, these pawns just make sure that this knight is falling, so the game is over. White cannot do that, and the logical move is what if d3, just starting with this move, then short castle, and after short castle, white again has problems after e4. Just opening the position up, and these pieces, and especially this hanging knight on e2 will be a huge problem. For example, it takes on e4, fe, queen e4, and let's say rook e8. So this is something which you should aim for in the Polerio defense, that your development is much better. Black is down 2 pawns currently, but basically the position is decided. So all of these threats on the e file with this pin knight on the f2 square, white simply has no defense. I mean, just really there is nothing to do. It's already too late to start the development because knight d4 is coming. So it's just winning. So this happens in case of 92, and yeah, bishop g2 is the other move I looked at, that in case white allows e4 like this. Okay, so first of all, if black would decide to accept this pawn, it's not very good because g6, and it's a little bit similar to the knight's case on e2, which was protected by the queen. Now the queen is guarding f2, and As you can see, the file is completely taken away from the queen, so yeah, queen takes e4 should be played. Now queen f2, king d1, and just short castle. Again, black is down 2 pawns, but white's king is just extremely weak. I just looked at rook f1 for fun, but black can sacrifice the queen and has a lot of pieces. The game is completely over. Knight d4, then the bishop is coming out, then the rook is coming. I mean, it's just a trivial win for black at this moment. And another line after e4 is queen h5, let's say, g6, queen e2. And again, it looks like the white is almost fine, so like, you know, short castle is coming next, and then maybe to undermine the position with d3 is the idea, but again, this problem of f2, that even with the queen on e2, bishop a6 is possible. Once white is taking, then black is taking also, king d1, queen g2, rook e1, let's say. And there are many winning moves for black here, but it's again quite nice just to ignore this knight. This knight absolutely doesn't matter at all. So black just castles, and in case of queen a5, for example, bishop f2 is winning completely. I mean, the rook is trapped. Once the rook is taken, black is opening with f4 and checkmating the king. So all of these lines are just losing for white. So white decided to play d4 after all, making e4 much more difficult. Black castled. And now knight e2 was played. I mean, e4 is coming against pretty much every move. So the only move which stops it, I mean, at least for a while, is bishop e3, attacking the queen. And yeah, I believe here it's important to go to b4, because now there are also some weaknesses on the queen side, and yeah, basically now white has to take on c5 first. If they would start with b3, then the knight comes to d4. It's not possible to take because of the pin, and after queen d1, simply f4, still not possible to take, and you know, f2 square is again getting under serious attack. So the queen b4, white has to take, then the knight takes. Okay, then the pawn has to be protected, b3, and this position is, I believe, kind of instructive. So now, since we traded dark square bishops, e4, you know, as it is, it's not that threatening, I would say, because f2 square is not so weak. So for example, d takes on e4, f takes on e4, and all of a sudden this queen can go to e3. I mean, this was never available with the bishop here. And okay, the position is still fine for black, but you know, it's not crushing by any means. And if black plays slowly, I mean, if white can make those two moves, white is winning up a pawn, and you know, our pieces are laughable. Black has to play something like rook f3, queen d2, and again some, you know, crazy things like e3 maybe, or bishop g4, some really not easy lines. So this is not good. In such case like e4, I mean, it's not opening, it's rather closing the e file, and there is nothing to attack on the f file. So there is a very nice solution here instead. And if you saw the previous video, then you can already be familiar with the, I mean, previous video in 1e4 e5. So then you can be familiar with this idea that first it's f4. So in this way, it's actually much more effective to either open the file at some moment with fg, or even preparing to play e4 at some moment and just sacrifice the pawn for positional compensation, but to have this very strong pawn on f4. So this is a nice idea. Okay, most likely white is playing bishop g2. I looked at a3 briefly, but then it doesn't do much. So there is queen d4, and in case b4, which was sort of the only point of a3, then there are actually many moves for black, but knight a4 is is the simplest, and you know, black is taking on c3 with a great position. So bishop g2 and now e4. So this is a typical idea which is good to know. Now white doesn't have a choice and it must be taken. It only can be taken with the pawn. And again, as I said, this fg already gives great positional compensation, but bishop a6 is even stronger according to the computer. I mean, just to prevent castling, and next move is fg with the threat or bringing the rook to d8, and you know, black cannot, sorry, white cannot achieve that stability here. So for example, gf4, now white is already up 3 pawns, but game is very close to lost because of knight e6. So taking on f4 or knight d4 is coming, rook d8 is coming, knight is pinned. This is just a horrible position. For example, f5, knight d4, queen d1, rook d8, really nice position. Like so many threats that there is simply no way for white to protect himself. So that would have happened in case of bishop e3. White played knight e2 instead. I mean, also I would say it's possible, like maybe opening the c3 square for the other knight. And black played a good move, which keeps the advantage. Played queen d6. And yeah, as I said, this is very typical, just to retreat to d6 and yeah, just continue with e4 and bishop a6. I just would like to show you one other possible way to play, and just again, this shows that in this line, almost every time it's possible to not to retreat with the pieces, so to say. So this very strange looking move of queen before check is actually very good. And okay, what is the main argument for queen b4? That it's a tempo. So like with queen d6, white has a move maybe to use for development. Here it's not really possible. So let's start with bishop d2 here. Obviously just queen takes on b2, and okay, obviously the rook has to be protected. Now bishop to c3, queen takes c4, bishop a5. So white is up a piece but can resign the game after e4, because either the f file is opening up or black is taking on d3 with like completely crushing position. It's -5 in computer language. It's not playable for white at all. So bishop d2 is not good. Obviously white can also block this check with a knight. Let's say with this one is more logical. But then the problem is that it's like, you know, queen d6 we played, and then we have e4. So we played queen b4, white plays something, and e4 immediately. Again, basically winning a tempo, and position is crushing again, not possible to take. E takes will come, next move probably bishop a6, rook e8. Disaster for white. So the main response is to play c3. And yeah, there is one nice idea here, queen a4, which I quite liked. So with the idea of playing knight b3 and picking up this rook. And I would say not even the rook is that important, but that the queen gets access to the uh, whole back rank, and basically black is just winning here. For example, bishop g2. So first e4. Obviously it cannot be taken, so it's quite good to include. And in case of queen h5, black just plays knight b3, ab, rook a1, and yeah, the knight is hanging, the pawn is hanging. If this pawn is taken, the knight is hanging and the bishop is under attack, so yeah, it's pretty much completely lost. So it would have been a very nice try, this queen b4. So even it looks, you know, a little bit illogical. I mean, it's a tempo move, so it still makes some sense, but you know, it just looks like that white can get a lot of time, but actually none of the move works. So. Okay, black played queen d6 in the game, which is also good, as I said, knight c3 and e4, excellent move. Computer is already suggesting to give up a piece here in like as one of the best ways for white, so that would be to take e4, fe4, and knight takes e4, rook takes f3. Okay, white has two pawns for the piece, but it's obviously not enough. It's a winning position for black. So in the game, something else happened. Queen h5, g6. I mean, it's not a must to include this move. It's actually hard to say whether it's that needed, but it's completely fine. Queen h6, e takes d, c takes d, and queen takes on d3. So black managed to win back the pawn and keeps the attack going. For example, if white would play bishop g2, then there is knight d4 with a lot of problems. Not possible to leave this knight, and there is also knight c2 check. So in the game, white decided to play bishop e3 and at least managed to trade down to the endgame, which is like clearly better for black. The pieces are better, some pawns are hanging, some light squares can be potentially targeted, so it's already, clear advantage for black, and just in a few moves, white's possession completely collapsed, which again, already he had to defend like very carefully, and like now it's still the case. It's not so easy to do. So I will just show a few moves because it really collapsed very quickly. So rook b8, b3, knight e5, so threatening checks with the knight. Knight went to c3. This is probably not ideal square. Rook d8, bishop e2, and now c5. So basically the bishop is coming to b7, knight b2, bishop b7, rook f1, knight g5. And yeah, basically this check on f3 is gonna win something, at the very least a pawn. So white decided not to give up the pawn, but after knight f3, basically he had to give up the exchange, because I mean if bishop takes, knight takes, then to any king move, rook d2 is coming. So, and if not takes, then knight g4 check, and then some unpleasant discovered check on the diagonal, like whatever material black would like to take. So bishop f3, knight f3, yeah, this was played, and okay, the game continued for another 11 moves, but obviously the result was already clear. Okay, so this was one game against this 94, which seems to be quite dubious and giving black excellent play in the Polerio defense. Thank you for watching, and see you in some other video.